let's start from introductions.
Let's start. Okay. Let's just do this.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. So who are you?
Okay, so I'm Justin Jesty. I'm a professor at the University of Washington in Seattle. I study contemporary art in Japan that is involved with various kinds of social change. And I've come to the Cocoroom maybe 3 times, but I met Kanayo-san a long time ago in like 2006 or 2007 at a meeting of Art NPO Forum という毎年やってた meeting で and Kanayo-san gave a talk, and I went and said hello to her after she was finished with her talk, and then came to the Cocoroom maybe the first time a few years ago after they started doing the guest house. So I never came when it was in the cafe, like up in the other shop in the Shotengai.
I see. Why did you decide to talk on the radio today?
Basically because I was asked to, but I think it's fun, so it's really easy to make media, and I think talking can be sort of, on the spur of the moment, don't have to plan it out so much, and it's interesting to see what comes out in the conversation. How about you? Tell us about you.
Okay, my name is Nguyễn, and I am currently trying my best to stay alive in the world. But before that, I originally in college studied biology. I'm just interested in living organisms and how they survive, and not only survive, but thrive and live well. I've always used the arts as a way for my own survival and my own way of understanding and connecting with the world. So after studying abroad in Japan for a semester, I had the opportunity to find an internship here, and the situation was right, the circumstances were right, so that I was able to come to Cocoroom. Originally, I wanted to come here to check as a guest in the guest house to see if it would be a nice place to work at as an internship. Fortunately, my school was funding it, so the messiness of money wasn't involved, but immediately after coming, I talked to one of the staff here, just casual conversation about interests, and immediately they were very excited about doing some kind of arts events together. And up until that point, especially as a college student not in the professional arts world, you don't get that often, this kind of improvisation and support and recognition, because some people have like ideas of what art is and what art isn't, and what's good art or worthy art. So I was very pleasantly surprised and drawn to how open and accepting and enthusiastic the environment here is to improvisational collaborations. So I spent a summer here just as an intern, working out on all aspects of what Cocoroom is, which isn't just a cafe, isn't just a garden, isn't just a guest house, but it's just daily practice of living and being in community and connection with one another, and enjoyed my time a lot there. So from then on, I originally worked in healthcare, but saw the importance of arts and community to a person's well-being. So my work now is centered on arts and well-being for specifically like marginalized communities, especially as I come from parents who are refugees and and have various experiences that that show the need and the strength of community. So that's why I'm here again, here for the summer festival. But again, everything's always improvisational, and you're in tune with the environment here. So someone asks you, oh, you want to talk on the radio? And then you say, yeah, and then that's what you do for the next 30 minutes. And you don't think about anything else, which I enjoy.
Yeah, usually if somebody asks me to do this sort of on the spur of the moment, I say no. Because I don't know why. But yeah, I think that like here it just seems very natural to try something and see what happens. And I think the question of like what the Cocoroom is quite difficult to explain, I find, to people who haven't been here, because I feel like it is basically about how people act together, kind of how they treat each other. And I think the aspect of appreciation that you mentioned is really a key part of what enables me to be casual about, making a radio program, because that was suggested in that sort of the people are celebrated and their individuality or kind of the unique parts of their personality are not just accepted and tolerated, but really highlighted, and people, genuinely, as you said, enthusiastic, I think, about, whoever it may be and wherever they are now, here, is sort of the starting point for everything. So it feels very natural, and also kind of opens up, I think, people's energy in a way that's really comfortable and kind of liberating. So I think that especially as Kanayo's, when I've heard her talk about it, is she really highlights the meaning of that kind of community of recognition for people who have spent many years of their lives, maybe their whole lives, without that, and sort of subliminally being told that what they have to say or what their individual take on something is doesn't matter. And I think it really takes that attitude of real interest to bring that out of people. I think people are really sensitive to being sort of subtly told that who they are doesn't really matter, or like most of who they are doesn't matter. It's just like
or they must change who they are to fit the environment that they're in, right? Today we're here with Iroha, but Iroha is shy, so she won't talk unless she wants to. Do you want to talk? No? Okay. But Iroha and I, we worked together on a little arts cafe project, and the theme of that time was natural harmony, right? How can you exist in harmony with the natural environment? And what you were talking about made me think about that, because oftentimes, when you enter society, you enter a workplace, there's already an environment there, and the environment is built on like this tradition of what it means to be a working place or an educational place or whatever kind of place, right? And if you don't change who you are to fit within that environment, it breaks you down. Like you have to act a certain type of way, talk a certain type of way, and be a certain type of person in order to successfully be in that environment. But that doesn't seem like harmony, right? That seems like the existing structure and environment is taking kind of importance over the people that make up the environment or the organisms, right? Like if you are thinking about a natural environment and you think about ecology, you wouldn't expect a worm to fly, right? So I feel like in a lot of spaces that we enter, that's what is expected. Everyone is expected to come there and act like a certain organism. But in Cocoroom, at least, it's not that the individual takes precedence over the environment, it's that everyone's flexible. If there's someone who comes and they are someone who doesn't talk, like they don't like to talk, then that's okay. There's still a place for them to make this environment and to make it kind of a healthy wholesome, well-rounded environment because that space is carved out for them. So that's what.
And there's a real kind of backwardsness, like to institutions that way, especially schools, I guess, but really sort of any kind of big institution, it's kind of a sort of violence, I think, towards people, especially people who really don't fit. I think that it can really manifest as like actual violence, as people, being restrained or expelled or kind of ground down until it's not even that they're being shaped into something else, it's just that most of them is being turned off or kind of shut down until just whatever small part that happens not to offend the institution is left. And it's strange, it's institutions are just people in but it really they when they start to sort of have a life of their own, they really are not, the dynamics don't really respond to actual people who have a lot more potential and are a lot messier. But I think that the messiness is where the beauty and sometimes difficulty but if there are sort of difficulties, the kind of environment that at least allows them to come out so that they can be seen and sensed is really much more positive and healthy than an environment that is just going to try to close something down because it doesn't fit. And when you mentioned the sort of ecological aspect, have you ever heard of Adrienne Marie Brown?
No.
Okay. There's so I brought some omiyage for people, so including this book, so I'll give you this omiyage. It's called Emergent Strategy. So Adrienne Marie Brown is like an activist, an abolitionist, lives in Detroit. I think she's based in Detroit. But her idea is that sort of using a natural world as a kind of model for human relationships and organizations that welcomes anyone and anything that sort of comes and sort of starts with reality. I think it's sort of a much more honest way of humans to be. Yeah,
the world is hard enough, so might as well rely on your own instinct on what is comfort and what is, because we know how to, in the end, we know our bodies and we know what environments we thrive in, but often we have to forget that, or we convince ourselves that that's not needed. Right?
And I think like one of the points she makes is that if you imagine like a garden, the thing that you pay attention to in your life like responds to attention. So it's there's kind of parts of one's personality that you don't really even notice you've forgotten, if it's sort of part of you that's never been recognized by anyone. I really value that idea that sort of if people aren't sort of actively attended to and acknowledged, then there's no starting point. And being in the Cocoroom, when I haven't really spent enough time here to actually see anyone sort of transform. Actually, you were here for longer, so I don't know if you kind of experienced that. But I sense that, as I look around the place, there's so many unusual artworks, there's calligraphy, there's kind of moving sculptures, there's a lot of painting, and there's kind of a lot of just kind of hybrid things like really fun kind of painted furniture, and feel it's really like lively fun visually. There's kind of, and every time I come there's some like new things that have sort of popped up, So it has a kind of magic garden kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
And I feel like if, this is kind of what will happen when the people in a place, attend to all of the fun things that anyone can do.
Yeah. I feel like there's a strong, why not? If someone suggests something, it's like, oh yeah, why not? Why not try that, right? Like earlier downstairs, I saw a clock that was painted over, and the numbers were painted again on the clock in the same place they were, but in paint. And I feel like it doesn't really make sense to do that. Like, there's no monetary value from it. There's nothing that's changed other than, the numbers are in the same order and they're just painted on top of this clock, right? And some might say, oh, you just ruined the original clock. But unless you paint on it and see what happens, you don't really know. And there's just so many clocks out there anyways. Like, people are mass producing clocks, so why not have one where you can just do something funky with it and see where that goes. But yeah, I think it helps you release a lot of your things that you hold strongly to for no reason, that you don't really think about, but that you feel hesitant to embrace, because it's messy, or because it's weird or strange or a waste of time, right? But it's living kind of is just finding the best way to waste your time and enjoy it.
Everything's a waste of time if you think about it too much, or if you let
So yes, so that's what's happening here in Cocoroom, or now I believe going by Kamagasaki Geijutsu Daigaku, Kamagasaki School of the Arts. But from now on, moving forward, this space that already has a community that comes to it, knows what it's about, gets to paint clocks and make chaos. The talks are to expand or kind of emerge now at the Irene Center, which is the center that a lot of the gay laborers in the region rely on currently and historically for kind of, it's a landmark of the region, I guess. So shall we talk about that?
So
what stands out to you when you think of, maybe it's called Art Center, maybe it's not called Art Center, but of a space like Cocoroom opening up at a location where, that has a strong history of kind of, that's not super associated with the arts, but is associated with laborers and building.
Yeah. The kind of separate from the Cocoroom specifically first, I'm an American citizen. I grew up in the United States, and coming to Japan, and not just coming to Japan, but doing this kind of research. I also researched places in areas in Japan that are depopulating, that have very elderly populations, sort of farming villages, and there's some big art festivals that people are trying to use to try to bring tourists or people to move back to those rural areas that are kind of vanishing. There's smaller ones as well, but in those cases, in a town, a settlement, like a little village, when the people disappear, usually most of the buildings, their houses are left there. Or in a village where there's still people living, gradually sort of families will, the elderly people will go to a care home or die, and the house is left. And there's the memory that seems to attach to places for Japanese people seems to be more intense and more meaningful than sort of I was raised to be sensitive to, I think, in American culture. So American culture is kind of the worst version of just pretend the world is empty and kill everything that gets in the way and
just consume.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Or extract. Yeah. So how can I make this work for me? Kind of attitude. Yeah. Whereas the idea that spaces, even if people aren't there, to like defend them or say like this is what this space means. That like a building, especially a house or the Aiden Center, I think people slept there overnight. It was part of the service where it had like rooms where people who otherwise would be on the street could spend the night. So, and it's community kind of landmark because it provided so many services in an area where there aren't. I gather that there weren't really many other places to go. That the kind of emotional investment that has gone into that place, over the years, that accumulates in the place somehow. That it's something that people can sense when they go there.
The vibe.
Yeah, and that it's not something you should ignore. That's something really meaningful. So I feel like attending to that, it's kind of maybe like a ghostly kind of aspect, and that it's not really a clear like message, like it's literally telling you something, but it's not dead, and it's not like a neutral space. So I feel like the paying respect or kind of listening to a space is really important practice for moving into a house that is maybe an old style farmhouse, that maybe there could be like a process of sort of acknowledging the kind of ghosts of the past or the lives that have been led through that, in that space, that have left their mark on the space, that shaped it slightly. So I feel like the attachment that people in the community have to that space is really important. So something like the Cocoroom that is, I think really successful in acknowledging and sort of bringing to life or bringing out people's idiosyncrasies and sort of unique ideas and experiences, that if that I think that there's some potential there for maybe having developing same kind of attitude to a space that has so many sort of complex, tragic as well as sort of care, sort of that's seeped into the building over the years. So I hope that it maybe could be sort of provide an entryway that's so respectful to that, I guess I could say that history, but it's more, I don't know, it's more like, I don't really know what the right word for it is, but something more alive than just sort of history.
I think something like acknowledging like spirit in a spiritual sense, even like some kind of ritual that brings kind of new intentions while not erasing kind of history and erasing past the people's stories that already are there, right? And that requires you to even like get rid of ideas of even what you want to make. A lot of it's improvisational, right? Like it's good to have a plan, it's good to have an idea of what Cocoroom is about or Kamage is about, but in the end it's entering the space and seeing, kind of like making art, right? Like you see in front of you, you have a canvas and you have, maybe you don't have a paintbrush, but you have like a piece of wood, then you know that you're going to work with that to make something that honors the canvas, honors the piece of wood, and puts it together in a way that is cohesive, and maybe even not cohesive, but makes something out of it that is more than what it was before.
And it's kind of like listening more than sort of doing in a way, like like people who are who are sort of professionally creative, I guess. A lot, I hear a lot of people talk about how writing music or any kind of creative work doesn't seem like it's your ego doing it. It's like it comes from somewhere else, and it kind of comes through. I feel that, kind of some kind of practice of listening, like that the building has something to say, That it's not really a matter of like what can we do with this space, but like what is the space telling us?
Yeah. This is another point, and unrelated to kind of space and history and spirits within the space, but what stood out to me when thinking about having an art center in a labor center is, well, I thought, personally speaking, my dad is a laborer and he works in HVAC, so heating, ventilation, air conditioning, right? And he's never proclaimed to be an artist, even though he will build these like very functional but also like complex, intricate structures. And if someone who has like an MFA did it, they would call it like some kinetic sculpture or something, right? But this is what he's done all his life, and has brought us to go to the local swim center to see his installation.
Oh, that's cool.
Right? But not in a here's my art way, but here, like, I made this and now there's air conditioning in this room type of way. So I think, he's never proclaimed to be an artist, but yeah, and that's like maybe something of the generation before myself, at least, because I see him as an artist, right? And I see his work as producing art. And something I'm thinking about is like I wonder if that's okay to just proclaim someone as an artist. Like, do they want to be one or not? Is it universally good to be one? I don't know. But I'm thinking about the reception of such a center by people who are laborers and going there to do their work. I think there is a lot of possibility and excitement of recognizing and having people acknowledge your daily labor as artistic, if you want to be recognized in that way. So a lot of excitement about that, especially because there aren't, like, I feel like maybe it's my like preconception, my like stereotype of a construction worker, but like I feel like it's not often that someone will go home after a day of laboring and be like, I want to paint a painting now, right? It's usually, it's so hard on your body and your mind that you just like have a beer, go to bed. So I think there's a lot of something I'm very excited about. This is having that space be made available to people who have been building and been creating all this time. And I'm just interested and curious about how that will move forward, because it already happens a little bit here in Cocoroom when people stop by to have a cup of cheap coffee and end up participating in the arts activities, right? But Cocoroom has always been originally for making art. So in a setting that's originally associated with hard labor, how does that mix and what comes of that? It's not something that I'm like I feel not neutral about it, but it's just something I'm open to seeing what happens, right? I have no expectations of what will come, but I think something interesting will come.
I didn't, like when it was before the guest house started and it was just the cafe bar kind of store, I never saw it when it was in that form, but I get the sense that it was maybe less about art right at the beginning, that it was kind of primarily cafe, but that when it was before she moved to the shopping street here next to Kamagasaki, it was in the festival gate, and the people who came were more like art world people, so it was kind of like if a bunch of art world people come to cafe, then it ends up being kind of creative space, but also that maybe gradually the creative activities that I think are much more prominent and central now, kind of grew gradually. And I think it would be really good to preserve that aspect of like a space that's just really easy to come into, that doesn't imply that like if you come in you have to write a poem if you want to come in here kind of thing. Like that's just really easy to come into, and if you want to come and have a beer and then go home, then that is fine too. I really feel like that is vitally important for making it the kind of space that it is, that there's such a I don't know, as a, you know, as especially as a researcher, there's a way that I'm kind of like feeding off of phenomenon. So it's kind of, you know, I can say like it's really refreshing to come and see like the diversity of people here. I don't know, my positionality I guess is something I have a little bit of skepticism about, but it really is something that I find so enlivening for myself, in that the people are here with quite different intentions, and certainly with different experiences and sort of things to share if you start talking to them about something. But I feel that part of what makes that possible is that it's really kind of undemanding. There really isn't a kind of set expectation for people who come and spend time here. So I hope that would continue to be part of the space. And at the beginning of what you said before with your father's awareness and showing you the HVAC systems that he had installed, that one of the differences between art and like an HVAC system is how people look at it, right? Like you're trained that HVAC systems are invisible, right? That you're not supposed to really pay attention to them. They just do things, and you know,
makes you comfortable.
Right. But art, and it could, as you said, like it could be actually like an HVAC system, but if it's treated as a work of art, it's like about how people are looking at it, right? That it's treated as something that you should look at, and that looking at it is supposed to tell you something. I feel like that kind of attitude shift is possible for anything, but unlearning kind of all of the ways that you learn to not attend to parts of the environment takes time, or it's something that kind of has to happen. But I think that the idea of like, I don't know, amateur art or something like that for me is not, it's interesting more because it's a different way of looking at the world, rather than like there's somebody who's not a trained artist making artwork or something. It's not really that. It's more like anything that anybody made. Like how are you attending to that or not? And if you're attending to it as an artwork, anything is available to that kind of appreciation, I guess.
Honoring almost.
And also kind of like not putting it in a box. Like artwork, there's a part of it where it's like not yours, you know, and it's not up to you to tell it what it should be, right? That it, you know, kind of has something of its own.
Yeah, that changes depending on who's interacting with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think our time is up and we've talked our mouths off.
So. I can keep talking forever, right? So it's
I sometimes don't want to talk ever, but today was a good day for talking, and that concludes our Kamagasaki 芸術大学 radio session.
Iroha-sama, 本当に何も you don't want to say anything?
Oh, and to end today's session, we'll have a reflection from the special guest, the special guest who's so special. She didn't talk. Iroha. なんか、そうね。One word, 3 words. 聞いてくださってありがとうございます。私もなんかすごく勉強になりました。またお会いできたら嬉しいです。イエーイ。 Thank you.